Step into the blood-soaked streets of 1850s New York, where the air hums with hatred and the clash of fists is a nightly symphony. At the centre of this brutal world stands William "Bill the Butcher" Poole, a butcher by trade but a warlord by nature. Fueled by raw fury and a seething hatred against all that is Irish, Catholic or foreign, he didn't just fight for dominance, he ruled with blooded knuckles and unyielding brutality. This is the savage tale of how one man carved an empire of fear, etching his legacy in violence and chaos. This is the story of a man who unleashed terror on Irish migrants arriving in America, seething in fury as he saw boatloads of famished Catholics fleeing the Great Famine arriving in New York Harbor. Born on July 24, 1821, in Sussex County, New Jersey, William "Bill the Butcher" seemed destined for an ordinary life. The son of English immigrants, Bill the Butcher was raised in a butcher's family, a modest trade that would later define his life and death. As a young man, he moved to Manhattan, where the streets were alive with opportunity, tension and violence. But the New York City Bill the Butcher entered in the mid-1800s was not a welcoming place. Waves of Irish immigrants fleeing the Great Famine flooded the city, competing for jobs and settling in places like the infamous 5 Points neighborhood. To Bill the Butcher, these immigrants weren't neighbors, they were invaders. The son of Protestant Anglo-Saxons, he saw the Irish Catholics as a threat to the very fabric of American society. Bill the Butcher wasn't just a butcher by trade, he was a fighter by nature. Standing 6 feet tall and weighing over 200 pounds, he was a giant for his time, in a time when most men were far smaller. But it wasn't his size alone that made him terrifying, it was his unrelenting brutality. Bill the Butcher didn't just fight, he dismantled his opponents. In the underground world of bare-knuckle boxing, where no rules applied, Bill the Butcher thrived as a notorious, savage fighter. He didn't hesitate to use his teeth, tearing at flesh and biting off noses. His fingers were weapons, capable of gouging out an enemy's eyeballs in the blink of an eye. By the end of a fight, his opponents were often unrecognizable, their faces reduced to swollen, bloodied masks of defeat. If fists didn't suffice, Bill the Butcher turned to knives. Years of slicing meat in his father's butchery had given him an uncanny skill with blades, and in a street brawl, his cleaver became an extension of his brutal instincts. During one of these fights, Bill the Butcher lost the sight in his left eye, giving him a more menacing look, but he carried the disfigurement with pride. A testament to his brutal commitment to violence. Whether in a street brawl or a gang war, his blades and fists carved his way to dominance. Yet for all his savagery, Bill the Butcher wasn't just a fighter. He was a man who revelled in vice. A heavy drinker and a gambler, he thrived in the chaos of New York's underworld. By the 1850s, he had closed his family's butcher shop and opened the Bank Exchange, a saloon that became infamous as a den of drunken brawls and dangerous deals. This wasn't just a business venture, it was a stage where Poole's fearsome reputation could shine. In every interaction, Bill the Butcher exuded an aura of danger. His saloon wasn't merely a place to drink, it was a lion's den, where stepping out of line could result in a face-off with the butcher himself. His combination of brute strength, cunning, and a complete disregard for morality made him a figure to be both feared and respected. Street gangs in New York were fluid, their allegiances and names shifting as leaders came and went. But Bill the Butcher wasn't just any leader. He was the architect of one of the city's most infamous gangs, the Bowery Boys. Formed by merging his own Washington Street gang with others like the American Guards, Atlantic Guards, and the Order of the Star-Spangled Guard, the Bowery Boys became a nativist juggernaut. The Bowery Boys were more than thugs, they were a brotherhood, bound by their shared hatred of Irish Catholics and other immigrants. They viewed themselves as protectors of true American values, cloaking their violence in the rhetoric of patriotism. At the request of the Native American political party, Bill the Butcher led large gangs of hoodlums of American descent in violent campaigns against Irish immigrants. Operating near 5 Points, where the Irish and German immigrants settled in cramped tenements, the Bowery Boys waged a relentless war. Their greatest rivals were the Dead Rabbits, an Irish gang that matched their ferocity blow for blow. Week after week, These gangs turned the Bowery and Five Points into battlefields, with fists, knives and clubs their weapons of choice. Bill the Butcher thrived in these clashes, his blood-soaked legend growing with every fight. Poole's hatred of immigrants wasn't confined to the streets, it bled into politics. He became a prominent figure in the Know Nothing Party, a nativist political faction that sought to limit the power of immigrants and Catholics in America. Through his gang, Bill the Butcher influenced elections, using intimidation to suppress Irish Catholic voters. His Bowery Boys became the muscle behind the Know Nothings campaigns, terrorizing polling stations and ensuring nativist candidates held power. Bill the Butcher wasn't just a gang leader, he was a political enforcer, his fists and knives shaping the city's future. Poole's reputation for violence extended beyond gang wars and political intimidation. On October 22, 1851, Bill the Butcher and a group of associates, including the pugilist Tom Hyer, descended on Florence's hotel at the corner of Broadway and Howard Street. What followed was an act of cruelty so shocking it was reported in the New York Daily Times. Arriving in the early morning hours, Bill the Butcher and Hyer demanded drinks from the bar. The barkeeper, Charles Owens, refused, citing their growing rowdiness and the fact that they had already been served twice. Enraged by the refusal, the group launched a vicious attack. Owens was seized by the hair, held down as Bill the Butcher and Hyer beat his face relentlessly. Witnesses later described the aftermath in gruesome detail. Owens' left eye was completely destroyed, and the flesh of his cheek was mangled beyond recognition. The attackers didn't stop there. They ransacked the establishment, cutting up the proprietor John Florence's hat into ribbons and trampling it underfoot, mocking him in absentia. This attack epitomized Poole's unchecked brutality, a display of power that solidified his standing as one of New York's most feared figures. Poole's rivalry with John Morrissey, an Irish-born prizefighter, culminated in a violent gang war that reached its bloody climax on February 24, 1855. The two men had been bitter enemies for years, their personal hatred emblematic of the larger feud between nativists and Irish immigrants. That night, Morrissey entered Stanwix Hall, located at 579 Broadway, where Bill the Butcher and his gang were already drinking. Heated words were exchanged, and the confrontation escalated. Bill the Butcher, larger and more experienced, overpowered Morrissey, delivering a severe beating that left his rival humiliated and blooded. Later that evening, the violence spilled over. 3 members of Morrissey's gang, including Louis Baker, ambushed Bill the Butcher at the same saloon. Baker, a New York City policeman, drew his pistol and fired. One shot struck Bill the Butcher in the chest, piercing his heart. Miraculously, Bill the Butcher didn't die immediately. For nearly 2 weeks, Bill the Butcher clung to life. The man who had led violent raids, terrorized immigrants, and dominated New York's underworld now lay dying. Despite his grievous wounds, Bill the Butcher refused to give in easily, his iron will a grim testament to his reputation. On March 8, 1855, Bill the Butcher finally succumbed to his injuries. His last words, "I think I am a goner, if I die a true American," became a rallying cry for his nativist followers. Poole's funeral was a spectacle unlike any the city had seen. A procession of 155 carriages and over 6,000 mourners wound through the streets of New York, draped in American flags and filled with nativists paying tribute to their fallen leader. To his supporters, Bill the Butcher was a martyr who had died defending the country's values. To his enemies, his death was a long-awaited relief, but Poole's death only intensified the violence between the Bowery Boys and the Dead Rabbits. New York streets ran red with blood as his gang sought vengeance. Louis Baker, the man who shot him, escaped justice, fleeing south with the help of powerful allies. Meanwhile, John Morrissey, despite his role in his death, rose to prominence, his name a symbol of Irish defiance in the face of Poole's hatred. He eventually became a U.S. congressman. For many, Morrissey's triumph was a bitter irony. A man Bill the Butcher had sought to destroy not only survived but thrived in the aftermath of the Butcher's death. Bill the Butcher remains one of the most infamous figures in New York's history. A butcher by trade, a boxer by passion, and a gang leader by necessity, he embodied the violence and hatred of a city at war with itself. His life and death are a grim reminder of the cost of division and the enduring scars left by prejudice. His life was immortalized in the hit movie Gangs of New York, which guaranteed he will always remain part of American cultural memory. Like every enemy the Irish has faced, he lost, and the America that we have today is one he would have detested. But as always, those whose trade is bigotry will always fail as the human spirit rises above its prejudices. If you like this video and want to watch more like it, please subscribe to Valor and Vice.